The observation deck of the Coalition flagship Eternal Vigilance thrummed with tension as Ambassador Zekthor watched the carnage unfold on the planetary surface below. His secondary eyes blinked rapidly, a Krillian expression of deep distress as he observed the wounded being carried from the battlefield. "The Vorkai breach our lines," reported Commander Shax, her mandibles clicking with barely suppressed panic. "Sector 7 is lost. Our forces retreat in disorder." Zekthor's gaze fixed on a particular scene displayed on the holographic tactical map. A massive shape lay collapsed in the scorched earth. Karnax, the legendary war beast of the Threndaxian Empire. The creature was nearly 4 meters tall at the shoulder, its armored hide bristling with biometallic scales that had turned aside. Plasma fire and kinetic rounds alike for 3 decades of continuous warfare. Karnax had been the Threndaxians' most decorated combat asset, bonded to the warrior prince Jextal since its hatching. Now it lay dying, ichor pooling beneath its shattered form. "The humans have requested permission to enter the hot zone," Shax said, her tone suggesting she thought them insane. "Denied," Zekthor replied automatically. "It's a death trap. The Vorkai artillery still has that sector ranged." "They're going anyway, Ambassador." Of course they were. Hannah crouched low as another plasma burst screamed overhead, superheating the air until her skin prickled despite her armor's thermal regulation. Beside her, Evan checked the power cell on their hover stretcher, his jaw set in that stubborn way that meant he'd made up his mind and nothing short of an orbital strike would change it. "Medical 1 to command." Hannah spoke into her comm. "We have visual on the target, moving to extract. Medical 1, you are advised that—" Hannah switched the channel off. She'd heard enough advisories for one day. They sprinted across the broken ground, ducking between the skeletal remains of what had once been a forest. The Vorkai bombardment had turned everything to ash and twisted metal. Hannah's medical scanner pinged constantly, detecting dozens of life signs in various states of distress, but her focus remained locked on the massive heat signature ahead. Karnax lay in a crater of its own making, having crashed there after taking a direct hit from a Vorkai dreadnought cannon. The beast's breathing came in shallow, rattling gasps. One of its 6 legs was missing entirely, torn away at the shoulder. Massive fractures spiderwebbed across its armored carapace, and luminescent blue blood, the Threndaxian equivalent, leaked from a dozen wounds. Surrounding the fallen creature, a squad of Threndaxian warriors stood in defensive formation, their weapons trained on every approach vector. At their center knelt Jextal, the warrior prince himself, his usually imposing form hunched in grief. His hand rested on Karnax's massive skull, and Hannah could see the psychic bonding lights flickering weakly beneath the beast's scales. "Get back, humans!" one of the warriors roared, his translator rendering the words in harsh clipped tones. "You dishonor Karnax with your presence. Leave us to die with dignity." Hannah held up her hands, her medical kit hanging from one shoulder. "I'm a medic, I can help." "No one can help," Jextal said, his voice hollow. "Karnax's wounds are beyond even our biosculptors. The bond we share tells me it is ending." Hannah approached slowly, ignoring the weapons tracking her every movement. She'd walked into hostile situations before, though admittedly never quite this hostile. Evan followed, maneuvering the hover stretcher into position. She knelt beside the massive head, her hands already pulling out diagnostic equipment. Up close, Karnax was even more impressive than the briefings had suggested. Its skull alone was larger than Hannah's entire torso, covered in intricate patterns of scarring that spoke of countless battles survived. One eye, massive and multifaceted like an insect's, but filled with an intelligence that was distinctly mammalian, focused on her weakly. The beast growled, a sound that Hannah felt in her bones. "Easy there," she murmured, running her scanner along its flank. "I've handled worse. You're just a big cat, really." The Threndaxian warriors reacted with outrage, shouting in their native tongue. Even Jextal looked up sharply, fury replacing grief in his expression. "How dare you diminish—" "I'm not diminishing anything," Hannah said calmly, her eyes never leaving her scanner's readouts. "I'm assessing, and what I'm seeing is a large, apex predator with a complex musculoskeletal structure. advanced neural pathways, and a cardiovascular system that's currently failing due to hemorrhagic shock and multiple organ trauma. Evan, prep the coagulant foam and get the portable oxygenator ready. On it, Evan replied, already pulling equipment from their packs. Hannah's hands moved with practiced efficiency, injecting stabilizers into several of Karnax's primary arteries. The beast flinched but didn't pull away. Perhaps it sensed her intent, or perhaps it was simply too weak to resist. On Earth, we had predators too, Hannah continued, partly to keep Karnax calm, partly to explain her actions to the suspicious Threndaxians, saber-toothed tigers, cave bears, dire wolves. None of them had armor plating or psychic bonds, sure, but the fundamentals are the same. Pump blood, move oxygen, keep the brain alive. Everything else is just complicated plumbing. She worked quickly, sealing the worst of the hemorrhages with biofoam, establishing fluid lines, calibrating her equipment to match Karnax's alien biochemistry. Her hands were steady despite the artillery fire that continued to rain down around them, despite the knowledge that Vorkai shock troops could emerge from the smoke at any moment. This was what she did. This was what humans did. They walked into impossible situations and said, "We've handled worse." Evan had the oxygenator attached to Karnax's primary breathing spiracles, flooding the beast's system with enriched air. The creature's breathing began to stabilize, growing deeper and more regular. "The missing leg," Jextal said quietly. "Even if you save its life." "Prosthetics," Hannah interrupted. "We'll fit it with the best prosthetic the Coalition can build. Better than the original, probably. We did it for our own war dogs back on Earth, before we had the tech to regrow limbs. Karnax will fight again if that's what you both want." She met the warrior prince's eyes steadily. "But first, we need to get it out of here. Your warriors help us get it onto the stretcher, or we all die trying separately. Your choice." Jextal stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he began issuing orders in his own language. The Threndaxian warriors moved to assist, and together, humans and aliens working in concert, they maneuvered the massive war beast onto the hover stretcher. Hannah kept monitoring Karnax's vitals during the entire extraction, making constant micro-adjustments to her treatments. The beast's eye tracked her movements, and she could have sworn she saw something like gratitude in that alien gaze. They made it back to the Coalition lines under heavy fire, the Threndaxian warriors forming a protective cordon around the stretcher, while Hannah and Evan kept their patient stable. Only when they'd reached the medical frigate did Hannah finally allow herself to breathe. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Zekthor stood in the medical bay, watching as Karnax took its first steps on a new prosthetic leg. The war beast moved cautiously, at first testing the cybernetic limb, then with increasing confidence. Jextal walked beside it, the bond lights between them shining bright and strong once more. Hannah sat nearby, reviewing surgical notes and sipping something the humans called coffee. Zekthor approached her carefully. "The Threndaxian Empire has formally requested that you be assigned as Karnax's permanent medical officer," he said. "They're calling you Beast Healer in their language. It's a title of tremendous honor." Hannah looked up and smiled tiredly. "I just did my job." "You did impossibility," Zekthor corrected. "No Coalition medic would have even attempted what you did. The risk, the audacity of it." "Yeah, well," Hannah shrugged. "Like I said, just a big cat, and I've handled worse." Zekthor's secondary eyes blinked rapidly as he processed this. The human capacity for understatement, he was learning, was matched only by their capacity for achieving the impossible. He made a mental note to ensure that no one ever told the humans what was actually impossible. They clearly didn't care, and that made them the most dangerous allies, and the best medics, the Coalition had ever known.